And now we've got the Genesis situation. Genesis situation, I think, is going to be bigger than FTX. But once that's out, I think we're gone. I mean, that's it. There's no more leverage out there.
Well, as Arthur said, Arthur Hayes said, he said, "Oh, do you remember the article I found you?"
The one earlier in like March last year.
Yeah, he said, no, recent one. He just said, I think the market's bottomed because everyone who's gone bankrupt who can go bankrupt has gone bankrupt. Like there's nothing left. Obviously, we still have Genesis, but part of me thinks Genesis is priced in because everyone knows they're fucked. I mean, what are their options? They can raise more money, but is anyone going to lend them money?
Is it worth just explaining this situation kind of from the start for anyone that doesn't know what's going on?
What can you explain about Genesis?
Well, here's what I know, and here's what I think I know. There's two different things, right? And I guess I really didn't uncover a lot of this until the FTX bankruptcy. I knew that BlockFi was heavily involved in Genesis, as was Three Arrows Capital. But essentially what was happening was BlockFi didn't have a other side of their market, so they were giving money to people like Three Arrows Capital, Genesis, who were then lending out and giving back a yield to Alameda, Three Arrows Capital once again. And the interesting thing about Alameda was my understanding, and this is based on a CoinDesk article, so I don't know if it's true or not, that they had something like $3.5 to $4 billion in loans to Three Arrows at one point. To Alameda at one point. Something like $2 billion to Three Arrows Capital. I mean,
Genesis had these loans.
Yeah. So, and this is all just kind of, going back to a CoinDesk article, which we don't know if it's right or not, but and then $2.5 billion of the loans that were out to Alameda were called in Q2. And that was, again, according to the same article. But they still had about $1 billion left. But we knew that BlockFi, as early as 2020, was involved in the GBTC trade. So they were getting lending. They were taking some of their deposits, but they were also getting lending to buy GBTC. They were holding it, selling it at a premium 6 months later, buying more, and that's how they were distributing their yield. And then other people caught on to Celsius. Celsius was doing that. We actually saw a filing this week that Celsius owns 35% of the entire Osprey Trust.
I don't even know what Osprey Trust is.
It's like a competitor to Grayscale.
Okay.
So, so we don't know if how much they have of GBTC, but everybody was involved in this trade, and when it was trading at a premium, it was great. Everybody was making money, loans going around everywhere. More shares are being created. The minute it's dropped down to a discount, everybody got stuck in the trade.
Because you got to hold for 6 months.
Yeah, exactly. And so now you have all these companies that have now gone bankrupt because they've lost money. They can't pay the yield. Their deposits are tied up, and they owe money to Genesis, but they're in bankruptcy. So you're not going to get that anytime soon. But then you have the other people that have deposits with Genesis, like Gemini Earn, for instance, $900 million in deposits that they can't get back right now because they can't pay them back. And that's just one entity. There's a lot. I understand that there's a lot of other entities that have very large deposits with Genesis that they were earning yield on that they can't get out either.
Do we know what the size of the deposits that were with Genesis and what they actually have?
We don't.
Nobody knows.
No.
Huh. Did you read Cameron's letter, public letter?
I did, yeah. I thought that was very interesting that, it clearly laid out that, they have $900 million with Genesis that they're trying to get back, that there's intercompany loans between DCG and Genesis, which is really interesting. I
thought it was really interesting for Cameron and Tyler to go public like that, to take it public like that.
I do too.
I'm glad they did, because let's have the conversation.
Yeah.
And I saw them go back and forth with Barry. I don't know what the answer is. It's like I'm well out of my depth here. But it's a really scary situation because how everyone seemed to be lending each other money. And it's almost like they were lending each other money and then using that or something else as collateral and lending something else. And it was just like it was like a multi-company Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, that's right. And if what I find is really interesting is, yeah, everybody was connected, but they were all connected through one group, Genesis.
Genesis, yeah. So when you say they're in bankruptcy, what does that mean in terms? Is that Chapter 11?
Well, it could be Chapter 11. That's typically where most of these companies are falling. They're falling into Chapter 11.
And why would they do that? Does that give them a period of grace to try and figure it out?
Well, in the case of FTX, they put themselves there so that they have a little bit of control. Because if someone else puts you there, then you lose some of that control. So very simply put, they did that to kind of protect themselves so that they could work out how they're going to pay all of their debts. And it might be 60 cents on the dollar, 80 cents on the dollar, 30, we don't know what it is, but it's for them to essentially restructure. And that's really the purpose of all of this, to restructure and figure out the legal way to do that, because they're just so in debt, they can't pay their bills anymore.
Right, okay. Can you talk about the offer you've made?
Sure.
What can you tell me?
Yeah.
I'll let you lead. Because it's public.
Yeah, it's public. I can talk about the offer. There's probably some things that I shouldn't say, and I'll keep those off. But look, essentially, we launched a fund that is opportunistic in nature. We were looking at a lot of different opportunities in the market when they presented themselves, and we've just been kind of in a holding pattern since. I don't know. We were going to launch it in January. We're like, too soon. Celsius fell apart. We're like, there's going to be another shoe to drop. So we waited. We finally launched it in October because we think we're pretty close to a bottom right now. And we're just picking up things from either special situations or activist positions. And one of the situations we identified was GBTC. We thought, okay, well, we're trading at a 47% discount right now. And at the time we looked at it, in a very hard way. It was essentially buying Bitcoin at 9,000.
Okay.
Right. Which is a pretty good deal. By the way, that's still the case, buying Bitcoin at 9,000. So, and the idea is a few different things could happen. If an ETF is approved and it's converted, or if redemptions are made to the trust, or if there's a tender offer, all of these things are in the realm of possibility, then you would essentially be buying Bitcoin at 9,000 and then getting it at 16, which is, as long as Bitcoin stays at 16. And I think it's fair that Bitcoin's, going to be in this range for a while. So we saw that opportunity, and then when the FTX, and then a few weeks after FTX, we noticed that they were heavily involved in Alameda and FTX. We're like, oh, there might be something bigger going on here. And so we started looking at more of an activist play, thinking that, well, maybe they're not going to voluntarily open it up for redemptions. We don't think an ETF is going to get approved this year for Bitcoin. So what are going to be our options? Well, our options is to try to, kindly convince them to open it up for redemptions, or at least to apply for redemptions, and to give everybody their Bitcoin at value. And then a group called Fir Tree filed a lawsuit before we could kind of get to that point. And then we said, okay, great. We're all for it. They're getting information through it's an informational suit. They're shareholders. They deserve it under Delaware law. And that's good for everyone that holds GBTC. So that's a step that we never have to take. And then we thought about it a little bit and saw that, Jim and I was going after Genesis, and all these other creditors are going after them. We're like, well, there could be a bankruptcy situation here. And if there's a bankruptcy and you've got DCG, Genesis, and Grayscale all involved, that's not good for the shareholders of GBTC. So we decided that we would simply put a proposal out there to all the shareholders of GBTC, open letter, saying that, look, if we had we should have a vote, and we would be happy to take over the trust. We have experience running trust. We have experience running ETFs. We have experience running closed-end funds as a team, not necessarily at Valkyrie, but in our past. I've been involved in actually taking over a publicly traded closed-end fund in my previous job, and then managing it and managing getting people their redemptions. So, our team has a lot of experience here. If something goes wrong, let's vote on us taking over as sponsor and getting people their redemptions.
So the shareholders can vote for it to be moved under Valkyrie's management. They can do that. And DCG or Barry have no choice in that. How does that even get organized?
Well, what you have to do is gather enough votes so that you can demand a proxy vote.
Okay.
And what's happened since we published our letter is other people have been organizing other people. And David Bailey, for instance, has been out there organizing a grassroots campaign of gathering up all the people that are shareholders of GBTC to say, hey, look, let's organize here. Fir Tree filed their lawsuit. We're taking active position. We get phone calls. I was working on Christmas Eve. I probably had 8 hours of phone calls on Christmas Eve.
Damn.
Of people calling us, like legitimate people that own shares of GBTC, say, how can we help?
Yeah, so there's multiple things happening here. There's the management of the trust, but there's also that you believe that trade with the discount is a good trade because at some point that the owners of those shares will be able to redeem them for Bitcoin at some point.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's probably enough. There's probably enough people, according to what David has collected, and I'm not involved in what he's doing, but I see what he says, and according to what he's collected, it's probably 10% already, which is enough to affect a vote.
Huh.
So then there could be a vote to change a sponsor, and then if there's enough people that vote for it, now I think Grayscale would fight it tooth and nail. But
how do they fight it and they try and get people to vote against it?
Yeah, they probably get people to vote against it. They probably say, well, we don't have to hand it over. And it really would come down to a Delaware Chancery Court.